Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, whenever you are. Hello, thank you for watching my videos. It's Mike, it's February 23rd, 2009. And here's a couple of news stories I've been following. For those of you that were wondering where I was yesterday, I took a day off. Sorry. Anyway, in the weekend papers, the Daily Mail, I grabbed this one because I thought it was kind of funny. Atlantis revealed at last. Or is that just a load of old goggles? Now, Google Earth, basically they've come up with a new version and you can actually go in and explore the seabeds around the continents, which is quite cool. Now, how do they gather that data? Well, basically, part of it is gathered through sonar explorations. Now, of course, someone has stumbled across a particular part of the ocean sitting off of, I believe it was Canary Islands, I think. Yeah, just off the Canary Islands, off the coast of Morocco. And they're saying, look, it's Atlantis! Yeah, okay. Now Google has basically said, no. This is artifacts from the methods we use for scanning. Sorry if it looks like a city underwater. Anyway, if you wish to go check, it is linked. As with all things. Now, on to some real news. Okay, over in the States, Seattle tells dockers go home. Okay, so basically the Port of Seattle has told some of their non-unionized workers to go take 2 weeks off because there's no cargo being shipped in. Now, the Port of Los Angeles and a couple of other ports across the West Coast are all watching this with bated breath because basically they don't have the authority to get rid of the unionized dock workers. So for instance, Long Beach has suffered 11% year-on-year loss in volume in 2008. Los Angeles Airport suffered an unheard of 14% decline in air cargo to 1.7 million tons. Okay, so basically, nothing's being shipped. And now what's happening is they're going to the unionized workers basically saying, okay, we've got to renegotiate our contracts because there is not enough work to have all of you people sitting here getting paid, and we're just going to go broke. So, yeah, not quite good. Okay. Other news, U.S. to expand stake in troubled Citigroup, and of course over on the Financial Times, nationalization is most likely way out of U.S. banking mess. Don't believe it, folks. Citigroup, basically they're saying, you know, they'll accept up to a 40% stake in themselves. They'll sell that stake to the government of the United States. I'm sure Bank of America are thinking the same sort of thing, although they haven't come out and publicly said so. This is not a solution, but a long-term solution, but this may be the only short-term solution. Now, Ambrose Evans Pritchard in the Daily Telegraph has an article, column this morning. Will Germany deliver on the Faustian bargain that created the monetary union? Basically saying, you know, okay, the bigger countries like Germany and France and the UK, they're going to have to bail out some of the smaller countries. There's no other way of handling it. And if they don't, the whole thing will collapse into a great big heap. Other news of note. Now, continuing on with Germany, what else has been happening in Germany? Okay, well, the Hypo Bank, Hypo RE, or Hypo Real Estate Bank, I mentioned this a couple of updates ago. Basically, the German government has changed their laws, so if necessary, they can nationalize a bank. The laws were changed to prevent this following the beginning of World War II, and how they went and nationalized all kinds of things they shouldn't really have nationalized. Well, the Germans went and changed their laws so they could nationalize a bank. Why'd they do this? Well, Hypo Real Estate, $600 billion in off-balance sheet assets. Okay, so these are all kinds of really weird financial instruments. What is called these special investment vehicles. And apparently they have a whole lot of them. Now, the Hypo Real Estate is kind of like Northern Rock here in England, in that a lot of its funding comes from finding cheap lending somewhere else and then selling it on. And then these the off-balance sheet assets are things like credit default swaps and you know, all kinds of hedging against all kinds of derivatives, hedge against credit and market risk. pointing out that such transactions were regularly disclosed in the annual report. In this quote here, Hypo Real Estate Group currently has derivative transactions in its books with an aggregate nominal value of approximately 1 trillion euros. In line with accounting standards, the market value is carried on the balance sheet. Yeah. Hypo Real Estate Group uses derivatives to hedge against credit and market risks arising from fluctuations in interest rates and foreign exchange rates, for example. Such hedges are connected to underlying transactions. The purpose of hedging is to avoid risks, not to enter into additional risk exposures. Yeah, except, hello, the whole point of what's happening with the current economic collapse is all of these stupid derivatives falling to pieces and not being covered by the insurance companies that should be covering them. So, carrying on to Northern Rock. What's been happening with Northern Rock? Okay, well, Northern Rock has decided that it's going to go and create a new off-balance sheet, secondary system to ring-fence these dodgy mortgages they have. Now, they're saying something on the line of 1 in 10 repossessions this year will be a Northern Rock repossession, Northern Rock mortgage. It's estimated that as many as a fifth of its customers are in negative equity, so 20% of the mortgages they have are in negative equity, which means that the house value is not enough to pay off the mortgage. Trust me, I know, I live in one of those houses. A house across the street, which is essentially exactly the same as mine, although mine's got a small extension on the back, otherwise it's exactly the same, just went for about 30% less than my mortgage is worth. So I don't know what I'm going to do with this house, but anyway, that's a different problem altogether. So Northern Rock, yeah, same sort of dodginess, getting money from the markets, and now they can't anymore, so they're changing their whole organization. They're going to split it into 2 different pieces. They're going to go get 10 to 14 billion pounds from the UK government so that they can start lending, and then Northern Rock will be one of the main lenders in the country. Okay, what's this going to do to the country? From The Guardian today, Britain faces summer of rage from the police. Middle-class anger at economic crisis could erupt into violence on the streets. Yeah, I'm only just figuring this out. Police are preparing for a summer of rage. The Guardian has learned. Britain's most senior police officer with responsibility for public order raised the spectre of a return of the riots of the 1980s, with people who have lost their jobs, homes, or savings becoming foot soldiers in a wave of potentially violent mass protests. So the Guardian is just figuring this out. Hello, we've been telling you for a while, never mind. Back to sleeping. Bah! Sheep. Bah! Anyway, basically they're predicting that this is going to start sometime around the, beginning of April. And this is when the G20 meeting will be in London. And hopefully they'll work something out then. So that should be an interesting summer for all of us here in England. Very good. Very exciting. Now, this G20 meeting, what's been happening? Right, this weekend past, the European component, a major component of the G20 met in Berlin in an emergency meeting called for by Chancellor Angela Merkel. Look, I've said her name right. And so Gordon Brown was there, and Sarkozy was there, and yeah, I'm not going to say the Dutch guy's name, although I did practice a bit. He was there, and they all spout, blah, 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 blah. Now, some of it was quite interesting, and I'm going to cover that in a second report. However, looking at some of the headlines, EU leaders push sweeping regulations. Britain to demand radical reform of the World Bank at the G20. EU leaders call for rapid launch of market reforms. Europe says all markets must be regulated. Now, where's all this coming from? I've linked a couple of other articles. Paul Volcker in the States said, crisis may be worse than depression. Now, the funniest thing he said in here, basically he said, we have no idea what's going on. There is little correlation between sophistication of a banking system and productivity growth. He stressed the importance of preventing financial institutions large enough to pose a threat to the entire system from collapsing. Yeah. And all kinds of nastiness. Now, Soros has also come out and said he sees no bottom for the world financial collapse. Yeah. Okay. So, what happened at the summit? I'm going to cover that in a separate piece, but essentially, it's not looking good. Okay, everyone. Peace, understanding, and I'll speak to you in a bit. Bye.